I'm John Healy, and I am the president of the Tourism Council of Frederick County's Board of Directors. On behalf of the many organizations in this community that have worked together to plan the activities over the next 2 days, thank you for joining us at the opening ceremony of the Star Spangled Banner's manuscript's visit to Frederick from its home at the Maryland Historical Society. To begin our ceremony, I invite the two surviving members of the Francis Scott Key American Legion Post World War II Last Man's Club, George Delaplane and Ray Gaffney, to raise a 15-star flag that had previously flown both over Fort McHenry and over Francis Scott Key's grave. The raising of the flag will be followed by the singing of the Star Spangled Banner by the Frederick Children's Chorus under the direction of Judy DeBoer.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Thank you to our veterans and to the Frederick Children's Chorus. At this time, I would like to invite Frederick's Mayor, Randy McClement, to come up to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a gorgeous day. What an absolutely historic and honorable day we have before us. On behalf of the City of Frederick, the Board of Aldermen, and myself, I'd like to thank you for joining us on this historic Flag Day in the City of Frederick. First, I'd like to begin by recognizing some of the elected officials that are here with us today. From a state, we have State Senator David Brinkley. I think we have State Senator Ron Young. State Delegate Galen Claggett. County Commissioners. I think we have Commissioner Blaine Young. Commissioner Paul Smith. And Commissioner Billy Shreve. And from the City of Frederick, our Alderman, Alderman Karen Young. Alderman Michael O'Connor. Alderman Shelley Alloy. Alderman Carol Krim. And Alderman Kelly Russell. Thank you all very much for coming out today. I'm also pleased to announce that we are being joined by a descendant of Francis Scott Key, Suzanne Key Boyle Herman. Can you raise your hand, please? Thank you very much for coming out. It's fitting that this song, the song lyrics inspired by the American flag, will sit today and tomorrow at this very site of the courthouse where Francis Scott Key began his law career. The building that is today's City Hall was Frederick County's third courthouse. During the Civil War, it replaced the 1785 courthouse in which Key had practiced on this same site. Francis Scott Key was born on a plantation named Terra Rubra, then a part of Frederick County, on August 1st, 1779. He would die in 1843 in Baltimore, but his body would be moved here to Frederick, in keeping with his wishes, in 1866. It would lie just 3/4 of a mile from this place, here in the city of Frederick at Mount Olivet Cemetery. The Key Monument Association erected a memorial in 1898, and the remains of both Francis Scott Key and his wife, Mary Taylor Lloyd Key, were placed in a crypt in the base of the monument. This weekend, we will witness for the first time the reuniting of great Frederictonian with the immortal manuscript he penned after seeing the 15-star American flag still waving at dawn's early light following the bombardment of Fort McHenry by the British during the Battle of Baltimore. The city of Frederick is honored to host the original manuscript of the Star-Spangled Banner for all of its citizens to view. We want to express our sincere gratitude to the Maryland Historical Society for allowing all of us this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I want to thank you all very much for taking your time to come out. I think you will have a great experience once the doors open to see this manuscript. I do want to say up front, it is a little dark in there. Please be careful. It needed to be for its lighting. As a reminder, there is no flash photography inside here. There's a number of other exhibits in there to look as you're going along, and a nice video to help entertain you while you're waiting to get in. So again, thank you all very much, and have a great day.
I would now like to invite Bert Kummerow, a former Frederick resident, who's now president of the Maryland Historical Society, and to whom we are very grateful for the opportunity to host the manuscript, to make remarks.
No derecho today. We're lucky, aren't we? It's great. It's always inspiring to come to this place because it's so beautifully maintained and so historical. And to think that Francis Scott Key would probably recognize these things. Of course, this is a new courthouse in his estimation because it was 20 years after he died. But the whole site here is just so beautiful. And I bring you greetings from Baltimore and from the Maryland Historical Society. The permanent home of the document that you'll be able to see this afternoon is at the Maryland Historical Society. And we're hip deep right now in War of 1812 bicentennial celebrations, commemorations. And this is such a fitting part of the whole thing because John Fiesler came to me and we talked about this, and he made a really good point about the fact that Francis Scott Key's life is defined by several locations, and it actually forms a pretty good triangle. He certainly was born and raised in this area right here. He spent most of his career in Washington working as a lawyer, and he was in Baltimore at that fateful moment in 1814 when the British attacked, and he was out amongst the British fleet and was able to observe this incredible event that must have inspired the entire city because people were up on their tops of their houses during this rainy 2 days when the British were bombarding Fort McHenry, and it was like a scene out of Gone with the Wind, I'm sure. And Francis Scott Key was at the other side, and when he saw the flag, like so many people in the town, it was just an inspiring moment that led, I think, with his words, with the things that happened after the war, to remember that moment. It led to a whole new attitude towards the United States. I think you can get an idea, I think, by looking at this document and thinking about that victory after a really tough war that was kind of ill-advised, that was a moment of truth for the United States. Were we going to be a permanent union or a bunch of states who were squabbling with each other? And this is the kind of thing that happens that really causes everybody to rethink, to reevaluate what this country is all about. So it was a very, very important moment. We're so proud to have that document in our possession, permanently displayed. And I want to invite you to come down to Baltimore, because there's a lot more on display than just the document itself. In 1844, when the Maryland Historical Society was created, the defenders of Baltimore were in middle age, and so we have lots and lots of material related to that, and a wonderful exhibit. And we just opened up an exhibit to one of the most interesting ladies that's ever lived in Maryland, a lady by the name of Elizabeth Patterson Bonaparte. And so we have a little bit of our information here inside that you can collect, and I wish you just a wonderful 2 days, and we're very proud to be here with this document. Thank you very much.
I'll now introduce Chris Hoff, the Tourism Council's Scenic Byway and Special Projects Manager. Chris coordinated the project to develop the interpretive markers about Frederick's connections to Francis Scott Key and the War of 1812 that we are unveiling at various sites today and tomorrow.
Well, I'll likely echo some of the comments already made by Mayor McClement and Bert, but definitely fitting here for this kickoff celebration. And we talk about beginnings, and it's so appropriate since I was fortunate enough to be at the beginning of this project 4.5 years ago. It was February of 2009, where we at the Tourism Council were thinking, what are we going to do in a couple years? We knew that Maryland was looking to be center stage of this commemoration, the bicentennial commemoration of 1812, and we wanted to make sure that Frederick, both city and county, played a big part in the state's plan, especially as it showed the nation what we did almost 200 years ago today. This project centered on interpretive media, a series of markers. We created 7 markers in 5 locations here in downtown Frederick, all linking Francis Scott Key to our sites here. Along those lines, and in the same vein, we wanted to link ourselves, as Bert just said, to Washington, D.C., where the flag that inspired him sits in the Smithsonian, and to Baltimore, where Fort McHenry is located, and of course the permanent home of the manuscript. So we've kind of completed that triangle, and we are hoping to continue that marketing message. In a few minutes, we will officially unveil the first of the 7 interpretive markers. It'll be right here at the southeast corner of Courthouse Square. As Mayor McClement said, it's so appropriate that we begin here because this is where Key's illustrious legal career began, back in 1801. This is one of the points that we share on the marker over there. Another one of the points that we share is that right across the street, of course, obliterated from my view, but right on Council Street, was the home of Eleanor Potts, a beloved cousin of Francis Scott Key. And that's also today the home of T. Michelle. It'll be the site tonight of a fete put on by the Historical Society, so hopefully many of you will be going to that. But we also talk down the street as I look across and see the spire of Trinity Chapel, the site where the pastor who baptized Key preached. And we tell all those stories on the marker. And the big thing is we want to make sure that visitors to Frederick and residents alike know the importance of these landmarks that we see around us. But really the importance of this square too, and again, so fitting and appropriate that we have the manuscript right inside these doors starting off this 2-day celebration here in Frederick. I want to kind of jump back a little bit of period of time. And I want to jump back to August of 1834. Key at that point was living in Washington, D.C. Matter of fact, he was a district attorney for the District of Columbia. But he would return here in that month of August of 1834 with his brother-in-law, Roger Brooke Tawney, where the Jackson Democrats were holding a large rally and picnic right on these very grounds. Now, the courthouse, as Mayor Randy said a little while ago, this is, of course, the 3rd courthouse that we had. Unfortunately, in 1861, mysteriously, the courthouse burned. But the 2nd courthouse, which was built in the 1780s, was the courthouse that Key knew. And that was the courthouse that stood here in 1834, where we had this large banquet 20-some tables, over 300 participants were here to hear Francis Scott Key on a stage located probably very near these steps that I stand on today. And it was here that Francis Scott Key was toasted repeatedly for his patriotism 20 years prior at the Battle of Baltimore. But he got up and he spoke words of praise for his county, for the city of Frederick, but most of all, he said the real honor belongs to those veterans from Frederick, the militiamen from Frederick, that went to Baltimore and other places to fight against the British, along with others. And they were the true inspirers of his song, of his humble song. So again, so appropriate that we congregate here to kick this off. And here, 179 years later, the manuscript comes to the spot where he was to deliver those speeches about the Star-Spangled Banner, one of only a few times where he spoke publicly about his writing of that song. Right now, I want to say that we also tell the story at different places, such as the Frederick Visitor Center, where we have an exhibit that will be unveiled tomorrow morning, the historic Frederick Hessian Barracks, Harry Grove Stadium, and tomorrow's big event at 3 p.m., Mount Olivet Cemetery. So again, Key's story begins and ends here in Frederick, and we are happy to share that with the nation. I'd like to recognize the two lead designers on our marker project, David Guiney and Ruth Bielabaki, if they would step forward and be recognized. There they are over there. I would ask, David is with interpretive direction and Ruth with ion design, and I could not pick better professionals to have worked with. The energy that they brought to the project, the outside eyes, really top notch, and I think you'll be able to see their great skill and work here.